these two gentlemen with me, we have Steve Heckeroth from Selectrek, and I'm going to say this wrong. I'm sorry, Praveen Penmensa?
Got it right.
That was not bad. That was first time out. And he's from Monarch Tractor. Now, what these guys are doing is really interesting. They're doing electric tractors, electric farm equipment, and they're coming at it from very different places. Steve has a 40-plus year history developing electric ag equipment and having a background in environmental science and having that understanding of the need for this. And then Praveen is coming from a different place. He's coming from automotive, from aerospace, from a technology side, has identified a way that he can add to this space, and these guys are coming in. So, we kind of understand why we need electric cars. We understand we're an e-bike crowd. We understand why we need electric bikes. Why do we need electric tractors?
Well, there's 600 million farms in the world, and there's only about 30 million tractors.
And there's only 2 companies in the world making electric tractors right now, and you guys are both here.
For the last 30 plus years, I was the only one building electric tractors in the world until about 5 years ago. So it's very good to have Peven come on board and help me out with this huge challenge to electrify agriculture. Once you use a diesel tractor to do agriculture, you have no chance of sequestering carbon because that diesel, it just voids the whole process. I've been to more than a dozen carbon sequestration conferences, and I've asked that question, do you include the emissions from the diesel tractor in your carbon sequestration calculations? And they go, well, there isn't anything else, is there? I said, yes, there's electric tractors. And electric tractors make more sense than any other electric vehicle because the weight is an asset because you need it for traction. Where in a car, it's the biggest problem you got is weight.
When we talk about things like that, you mention weight as being an asset in an electric tractor. There are a number of other things that are intrinsic to electric that give you a benefit as a farmer or as an agricultural company. Like you're not, you don't have the emissions, that's one, but you don't have the vibration, you don't have the noise. It's much friendlier to the animals that are on the farm. They're much more comfortable around it. You have fewer workman's comp claims because you don't have the hearing loss, you don't have the respiratory. Now, there's going to be more and more technology that comes into play to make the tractors behave more like cars. And what are some of the things that are driving you in that direction, and what direction are you ultimately going to go?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. And again, I come from that automotive background, right? I started my career off with 800 horsepower rally cars back in the early 2000s.
Very nice.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about agriculture is a lot of the things that all of us struggle with in terms of, hey, how do we use the data that we collect? How do we use technology? How do we use the cameras that are sensing what's happening on the farm? All of that makes a lot of sense when you think about an electric tractor. For me, I'm a huge car guy. I have had the opportunity to work on everything from single wheel, rollerblades, electric, all the way to electric aircraft. But the realization struck me in 2015 that the most important vehicle on the planet is the tractor. And that's what Steve's getting at, right? And the reason for that is without the tractor, there's no scaling of our food ecosystem. There's no scaling of our food production. It's the tractor that allowed us to get the yields, that allowed us to grow the population. Mobility is great. Mobility is important. Don't get me wrong. I come from that world. But it was this realization that brought us into taking all this technology from automotive and bringing it to the ag world. Right. And electric makes a lot more sense, like Steve's talking about. The reason for that is once you go electric, it also becomes the data sensing side, the emission side. All of that is very logical, right? If you have a diesel tractor, people forget that 80% of the time tractors are idling. They're not
idling,
moving.
They're not sitting exactly
They're just sitting around, right? Putting emissions up into the air. And also if you have sensors and if you want to know what's happening in your farm, you need sensing. Are you going to leave your engine running, your 100 horsepower tractor diesel engine running all day long just so you know what's happening in your farm? It does. The electric smart tractor, which is what we're building at Monarch Tractor, makes a lot of sense if you think about it. And it's going to be the platform, it's going to be the common template platform going forward for all farm equipment.
There's something that I I just keep hearing and I keep seeing, and like I don't believe it. I'm sitting here looking. I'm just one guy, and you're talking about the millions of farms, the millions of farm equipment, the huge opportunity we have to reduce emissions, but also generate more food and be a better capable of surviving species, right? Why are you the only two guys up here?
Well, that's a very good question. I look at it as plants and our interaction with plants is what allows us to exist. And if you look at a chart of the last 20,000 years of global temperature, you'll see that the temperature was rising up until agriculture started. And then the temperature levels off and actually goes down until the Industrial Revolution. Then it goes straight up. So agriculture to me is the only thing that can turn climate change around on a global scale. But of course we can't use fossil fuels to do agriculture, because right now agriculture is responsible for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. So we've got to eliminate the use of fossil fuel in agriculture, and then we can make agriculture turn climate change around, and that's the only thing that can do it on a worldwide scale. We have 600 million farms out there, and more than 95% of them don't have tractors. They don't have the ability to increase productivity, and we can give them that if we provide the machines to do that in a very small scale.
And actually, that's a great point, right? Why is it that there's only a few tractor companies, the two of us in North America, doing this? And the reason for that is, I'll tell you my personal experience when we went out as a startup and said we're going to raise money. Investors were like, oh my God, we're going into ag. There's no money in ag. Farmers are not willing to spend on technology. And the reason for that is, the farmers have gotten squeezed on the margins historically. It's been the retail brands, it's been the stores where the margins are. And all of us should care about where our food comes from, but how many of us really know what happened on the farm where your food was grown? You know your brand, you might know a certification on it, but even today in this world, when there's an outbreak, we completely empty all the shelves of produce coming from a certain region.
Because
That's
we don't
the
know.
lack of food traceability that we have, and we as consumers have lost complete touch with how our food is grown. And what that means is the farmers don't have money, there's no technology going into ag, and that's the reason why all the big pharma, right, when you look at like companies like John Deere, etc., when they talk about tractors, they show you this $500,000 tractor in the Midwest. They're not talking to you about tractors that are making your fruits and vegetables grow. So ag has become very focused on big cash crops. They have forgotten the farmer. And the technology world has completely left behind the farmer who grows our fruits and vegetables. And that's the reason why we are trying to bring focus back to the small farmer by bringing all of this technology that's available. All day today we have heard about electrification, we have heard about smart tech, we have heard about sensing, connectivity. None of them are available for a fruits and vegetables farmer. So we are working really hard to bring that to that
let me
farmer.
ask a question from the technology side of things. I think a two-part question, right? The first part is, when you look at this space and you look at the barriers to entry as a business, right? When you think of it in automotive, it seems to be easier to make an EV than it is to make an internal combustion car. Do you see that being a large barrier to entry for these big companies, or is there like this concern that you guys are going to take off like Tesla and Rivian and have your big valuations, and then John Deere is going to come in and crush you like a bug?
Yeah, Tesla has proven that a pure play can outperform all the ag industry put together.
That's absolutely true.
The ag industry is in an argument with themselves because half of what they do is build internal combustion engines, and it's like cutting themselves in half. And as much as Ford says, oh, we're going to get into electric, and then 2 weeks later they said, but we're going to keep doing ICE. I think that's even more so in agriculture. Agriculture is a very conservative group. The average farmer is over 65. So, and it's like Peven said, that it's very large scale, and worldwide, it's not large scale. 95% of the farms are less than 5 acres worldwide. And we've got to get back to the community scale so we can complete the nutrient cycles within the community. Right now, those nutrient cycles are cut and they become pollution. There's no such thing as waste in a natural society. And we've got to get back to that, where we complete those nutrient cycles. We can't have these huge, long supply chains that are very energy intensive, with fossil fuel providing the energy for the tractors and also sending the crops out across the world. The shipping is just such a waste. When you can have your farmer's market, you know where your food comes from, it's growing locally, and the circle of nutrient cycle happens within the community.
Now,
that's where we need to get.
I want to speak to this because there's a lot of technology out there that is not only going to help the small farmer behave in a way that's more environmentally responsible, but actually help them increase their yield. And so it's not a question of this or, it's a question of this and, right? Can you tell us about some of that technology and some of the advantages of electric that are going to help those small farmers?
Exactly, and that's where the data play makes a lot of sense, right? As we are building that smart electric, machine that is not just capable of doing operations out in the farm, but is also capable of providing alerts back to the farmer and traceability back to the consumer. The tractor, at the end of the day, covers each and every, crop that is grown. As a consumer, imagine getting access to knowing actually where your food came from, what chemicals went into it, when was it actually harvested. We have no access to any of that data. And that's from a consumer perspective. From a farmer perspective, Joe, that you're alluding to, right now, they have to basically put pesticides or put chemicals across the whole farm to protect the farm because they don't see where the infestation is happening. And they don't have the labor to go and check every corner of the farm. So what they do is they just spread everything out, right? So the farmer can actually, using data, using the same cameras that run our automation system, figure out where exactly and precisely to apply the pesticides and the fertilizers in limited quantities.
And that's even better because then you're saving the bugs that are good bugs. You're saving the plants that are good plants. Because one of the things that nobody talks about that's really terrifying is the reduction of insect mass, right? And this is something that your technology is going to be there. And I just want to take a moment before I get into the next question. And for everybody here who understands, these two guys in the market, they're depending on how you look at it, they're competitors, but they're really both up here kind of identifying the problem and working together. And the number one thing that they want is they want more tractors and more agriculture to come into play. And when was the last time you heard a CEO say, man, I really wish I had more competition. I really wish there was more going on. And it's so refreshing and it's so good to have you guys here and talking about that forward-looking future. Do you feel like a more collaborative scenario? We talk about in automotive, we talk about collaboration between the energy companies, the utilities, the municipalities. Do you feel like from a policy side that there could be more collaboration to help what you guys are doing?
Oh, absolutely. For 30 years I've been shouting into the abyss that agriculture is the solution to climate change. And it's great to have Peven come on board. And I think we both found that farmers don't have much money. And we both looked for those industries that do have money. We both settled on vineyards is one, horse arenas. The hobby farm market is another great one. But farmers are right on the edge. They're barely making a living. They're keeping tractors alive from the 1940s and 50s.
You mentioned that the average farmer in North America is 65, which is it completely blows my mind. So you're talking about a generational shift in you're asking them to embrace something that is very, very new. We're not even talking about fuel injection or turbochargers. We're talking about a complete paradigm shift. eventually we're going to have to get some younger blood in agriculture, right? Or
The younger blood is coming in. The
Okay.
whole organic food movement is moving very fast, and we get so many young farmers. I was just at a demonstration yesterday with two nonprofit organizations that help farmers, small farmers, get into farming. Only 1 in 10 young farmers that wants to get into farming makes it. And these two organizations are trying to improve that, get that up to 5 in 10 or even 10 in 10, so that they get the money, the financing they need for the land and the equipment. And we're trying to make that equipment affordable for
But
them.
that's the challenge, right, Steve, that you've seen in farming is the reason there's no people in farming is it's a very hard job. You have to wake up at like 4 a.m. You only control half the elements. You don't control the weather. You don't control the input prices. You don't control a number of different elements. And at the end of the day, the margin you make if you're successful and if everything lines up is 3 to 5% as a farmer, if you're a good farmer.
wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So why would a person where there's no technology on the farm, a young person who wants to be creative, who wants to apply tech and make a difference, go into farming? And that's what we are trying to change is we are trying to make farming more sustainable and more profitable. But also, Joe, the other big issue that we are all facing, right, is we have to change our food ecosystem. And right now, farmers are having to choose between either being sustainable or going organic. Have you ever wondered why there's a limitation of organic food when you go to your Costco or Trader Joe's when obviously there's a demand? The reason for that is for a farmer to go organic, he has to do even more in the farm. The
So that
tractor has
3
to run even
5%
more
gets
miles.
even smaller, yeah.
Exactly. If it runs even more miles, you're putting even more emissions, right?
Yeah.
That's why electric is a gateway to making sure that we control the emissions at the same time we have a great food ecosystem. And people don't make this connection on the farming side. They don't connect organic and sustainable on the farming side. And that's the connection that we need to make as consumers and start forcing change on the food side of things.
That's all great stuff. I'm going to be a little more explicit because there's an answer that I'm trying to get out of Steve, which is to say, what can the states do? What can the cities do more of to promote this? Are there the kind of incentives available to farmers to get started with an electric tractor? Because if you want to talk about buying an electric car, if I want to go buy an electric car today, I can get the federal government's going to give me $7,500. The state government, the California Clean Fuel Reward is going to give me another $1,000 to $1,500. My utility company is going to give me $500, and then I'm going to get another tax credit to put a home charger in my house. As a farmer looking at an electric tractor, do I get a deal?
Yeah, there's an organization, the California Air Resources Board, who should be doing that. Unfortunately, I think they're lobbied to a great extent. I don't know if anybody's from CARB here, but
They're walking around. They're walking around.
I was involved in the zero emission mandate, and I watched that over a 10-year period. I attended every zero emission mandate hearing for 10 years, and sometimes I was the only one in the audience from the public, but you bet the fossil fuel industry and all the auto manufacturers were there telling CARB what they should do. And eventually that program got canceled because GM sued. So they now have the farmer program, they have the core program, they still have the Carl Moyer program. But in the last 3 years, the farmer program has been out there. They've put $400 million into replacing old diesel tractors with new diesel tractors that have really complicated emission control system that farmers can't work on, and it causes them to be
But
less
Steve,
efficient.
I think you're trying to be polite here, right? I think Steve, here's the nitty-gritty of it, right? A tractor is equivalent to like 14 to 17 cars worth of emissions. And if a tractor buyer, to your point, Joe, buys a tractor today, he gets $0 if you're outside California.
Yeah.
Whereas you can buy a Tesla, and to Joe's point, you'll get all kinds of credits from charging infrastructure to everything else.
Yeah.
If you're looking at real emissions, then why is that the case is a question. And also the rest of the world is going ahead of us.
Yeah.
Europe, even countries in the developing world have now put in incentives for farm equipment, electrification. and we are lacking at a federal level. Why is it that a Tesla gets a credit but not a tractor that is worth 14 Teslas?
Exactly right. Well, guys, we're out of time, but I mean, Steve and I, we could do this for an hour and a half. Praveen, we just met, but I'm sure we could do this for another hour. So we are going to move on to the next panel, and hopefully for everybody listening, I hope you learned something, and definitely look up Select Track, looked up Monarch Tractor.